Do you enjoy living in Harlow?
Yes, I do. It's quite nice here. There's lots of things to do in the evenings.
Yes, I go to an evening class, come dancing occasionally, go to a club. I've never found myself at a loss for any great length of time anyway.
So Harlow was selected as a good site for one of the new towns because of its location primarily, in that it was adjacent to East London, and it was hoped that it would then help depopulate that overpopulated and underhoused area.
An overwhelming memory, really, you can't help comparing now, is everything was new. We were a bit like the Queen, everything smelt of new paint when we went there. Every building was new, every tree was a sapling, every pavement was brand new.
Frederick Gibbard was hired as the architect planner of Harlow New Town because he was qualified both as a town planner and an architect. He had experience of modern housing design, not just individual houses as an architect, but housing schemes in areas like Nuneaton and Hackney. So he was one of maybe the few people that had that all-round qualification and experience. The population of the area that became Harlow when it was just villages was about 4,500 people. And by 1957 the same area held approximately 35,000, and by 1967 approximately 65,000. So it was a very, very fast growing area. When people first moved here, their house might be ready, but their street, the road might not be complete, and certainly there wouldn't be grass laying out on the lawns. It was a very green space. There was a lot of woodland left behind, and there was still farmland in a lot of areas, because farms were not taken up for housing all at once. They were taken up as the building program was ready. So people were surrounded by a lot of natural greenery. However, they were also surrounded by a lot of mud, and there was mud everywhere, and people sort of complained about that. It was hard to keep their lovely new houses clean because they were walking mud in all the time.
My name's Sue Spiller, and I've lived in Harlow all my life. That's since 1954 I've been in Harlow. Yeah, before my parents came to Harlow, they lived with my nan and granddad and my mum's little brother in Chingford. It was only a 3-bedroom house, so there was quite a lot with when my mum and dad and me moved in. My dad was a builder. He was only young, in his early 20s when I was born, and when they heard that the new town was being built in Harlow, he saw that as an opportunity to get a house of their own. And so he applied to work in a factory that was here, because there was a deal on at the time that anyone that worked for the companies that were coming to Harlow were given a council house. So my dad got a job in Coray's ink factory, and before he started there, Coray's arranged for a coach to come down from Chingford, and all the people who were going to work in Harlow were on the coach, and they were just dropped off near the town, where the town centre was going to be. It wasn't there at the time, and told to go and choose a house that you can see. They had certain specifications, like how many rooms they were allowed to choose for how many people, but basically they were told to go and choose their own place, and they chose somewhere in Hare Street, Springs.
One of the aims of the Development Corporation right from the beginning was that people would need to take up a job in order to get a house. And so houses were allocated based on the job that people had, based on the fact they had a job, and also on the size of their family.
So my dad got a job in Coray's ink factory. My father and his father, my grandfather, were builders, and they'd always worked outside. It was really a sacrifice for him to work inside a factory for 2 years. He absolutely hated it. It wasn't that it was bad company, it was just that he was inside and he was an outdoors person. Even as a child, he was a milk boy. He helped the milkman with his horse and cart, and but it was outside. He always earned his money outside and much preferred that.
Yeah, this Hare Street is one of the, it wasn't a village, but I think they called it a hamlet before the new town was here. So these are new, but there used to be some old houses here. But 66 Hare Street Springs, this is the first house, the one that my parents chose when they got off the coach at the town centre to choose a house. I wonder if my mum liked history, I wonder if they liked this because it still had some of the old houses behind it. So I knew everyone that lived around here when I was at school because everyone in the same area went to the same school, so you always knew everybody. I could almost name who was in all the houses. Yeah, I won't be surprised if
My first memory in Harlow is of being at Hare Street Springs, and I was only little. I must have only been 18 months, 2 years old, and I can remember sitting in my high chair, and I've got a picture of the kitchen with the window at the end and me sitting in my high chair, and my mum gave me a plastic cup of tea and I poured it in my porridge and I stirred it all up, and that's my very first memory as a child being there, but it is very vividly in that house in Hare Street.
So Harlow was known far and wide as Pram Town, or as a Pram Town, because in March 1954 the Daily Mirror ran an article with a headline that called it Pram Town, and the name stuck. The reason that name had been thought up in the first place was that 1 in 5 residents were under 5. So there was literally just a lot of prams around. And of course at that time people left prams outside more, so when you went to the shops you were more likely to leave your pram with your baby in it outside the shop while you popped in to get a few things. So prams were really in evidence, and there were a lot of young parents and particularly young mums around.
Some people might think there could have been problems because of the age balance, but I think for my generation it worked in our benefit. We were the majority. We were what people now call baby boomers. There were 6 houses in my street. There was lots of other streets next to it, but 6 houses. There were 19 children in that street, and we all grew up there from babies to going off to our own homes.
With time, a building that had been the vicarage over at what is now the Stowe, the vicarage was turned into a community centre, which became known as Moot Hall, and very quickly community groups started growing up there. People essentially made their own fun, organised their own activities and ways to meet each other, because everyone was in the same boat. Everyone in the street was new. Residents established their own social activities, sometimes in facilities that were provided, such as Moot House over at the Stowe, and later neighbourhoods, smaller neighbourhoods were provided with community rooms which could be hired out for either classes or groups. But people also just organised things in their own homes, and interest groups started growing up.
So my parents and I lived in Hare Street for about 2.5 years, and the new houses were being built by the council in Northbrooks, and in those days you just applied to the council if you needed a bigger place and they gave you one. So we then moved down to Northbrooks, which was not very far away, and we had a 3-bedroom house with a nice garden. Well, I say a nice garden, it became nice. It was a nice space, but it was mud when we moved in, and my dad had to build a path and build a patio outside the front door and everything.
Is where Leslie and Raymond lived. This is where Gillian and Linda and David and Janet lived. Where John and Rosemary lived. And this is where I lived with my brothers and sisters, 4 of us. It is different. And at the bottom, this has always been just a little road, and at the bottom of it is the stream, and we used to catch stickleback fishes with our hands and collect them in jam jars. So this is the play scheme that Harlow Council used to run when I was a child. There was one in every area, and we used to have picnics out on the field. We used to play cricket and rounders, used to have stilts and all sorts of craft things, and we used to have competitions that between each play scheme in different areas. Oh, it's very sad. Very sad.
How has the street changed since you were a child here?
Very, very much changed. Well, apart from obviously everything looks dirty now. Everything's old and worn, and it was all brand new and sparkling all the time. The first car in our street arrived when I was 11. Before that, no one in our street had a car. There was a few motorbikes, but no cars.
Yeah, I think we were really lucky to have been brought up in the new town. There'll never be a generation that had so much freedom again in such a nice place. Basically, we were all London parents, most of Harlow, and then we came here to the countryside. It was just fields and trees and rivers, and we played out all the time.